your electronic devices to silence. Welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome the viewers at home who are watching the meeting via live stream. Tonight's meeting is being held both in person and via Zoom. Masks must be worn at all times in the council chamber unless you're addressing the meeting and you wish to remove it so we can just hear you a bit more clearly, or if you're debating or wish to talk, you're welcome to remove it so we can understand you. Please be patient if any technical difficulties arise, and then we'll be dealt with as quickly as we can. If you wish to speak on an item, please raise your hand so that it can be clearly seen. When it is time to vote on an item, please keep your hand raised until your vote has been confirmed. Just a reminder that it remains mandatory for everyone to have signed in using the safer WA QR code or the hard copy register. If I could ask you all to please be upstanding. Councillor Proud, would you please read out the opening prayer? She may not have it there. Councillor Proud?
Happy to read it if she doesn't.
We might go, Councillor Migdale, if you could read the opening prayer for us, please.
Certainly. Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name.
Amen. Thank you. Councillor Lagan, could you please read out the acknowledgement of country?
On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respect for elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you. You can all take your seats. Without prior approval, any recording of the meeting is prohibited. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the council being received. That brings us to official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I now declare the council meeting of the 15th of February 2022 open at the new time of 6:31 p.m. Item 2, attendance and apologies. So in person, we have Councillor Criado, Councillor Farrelly, Councillor Hatton, Councillor Kristovich, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Olo, Councillor Perkoff, Councillor Ree, Councillor Sargent, Councillor Sandri, Councillor Thornton and myself. And on Zoom, we have Councillor Joe Ferranti, Councillor Stephanie Proud and Councillor Suzanne Migdale. Councillor Hatton he will be attending, he's just running a little late. Item 3, approval of absence, I have nil. Item 4, disclosures of interest. All the disclosures from the Planning and Development Committee meeting can be found on the agenda of tonight's meeting and are displayed on the screen behind me. On the council meeting for this evening, Councillor Farrelly disclosed an impartial interest in the master plan Scarborough area. She owns property at 32 Scar Beach Road, Scarborough, and has an interest in a deceased estate at 23 Brighton Road. Councillors, are there any other disclosures of interest for this evening? Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I will change that now to, with the normalisation of Scarborough with the DCP, I understand that with the barrister ruling that it has that I would be having a financial interest, hasn't been currently tested, but I will run with that, so that from now on that will be in terms of normalisation of Scarborough with the DCP, as it is a financial vehicle. And I'll give that to the gentleman behind me.
Thank you. Is there any other?
Can I also ask that the numbers of the roads no longer get put onto the register? Yes. Thank you. Thanks.
Is there any other declarations, councillors? No? Then I'll move on to item 5, petitions. I have nil presented. Councillors, are there any unverified petitions you would like to present? Councillor Ree?
Yes, I have 147 unverified signatures. The City of Stirling Council formally passed a motion that the City of Stirling confirms that the name of the City of Stirling shall remain for perpetuity for the following reasons: the cultural significance aligned to the people who have lived and have called City of Stirling and the suburb of Stirling and their street address Stirling their home and place, the huge financial impact that will be placed upon ratepayers and residents of the City of Stirling if the name Stirling was changed on all crests, buildings, roads and facilities, The name Stirling is associated with different number of innocent people and places, etc., today and in the past, who have contributed to the history of Australia and in the world, and these people should be respected and their own history and values not lost or compromised. And it's mainly from the people who actually live with the suburb of Stirling.
Thank you. I'll now go, I just need a move and a seconder to accept that petition, please. Moved Councillor Rees, seconded Councillor Perkoff. A show of hands, please. All those in favour? I need Councillor Ferranti, are you voting? Councillor Ferranti, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Yeah, you are voting? Yep. That is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. Item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice. All questions that were taken on notice during that meeting appear in the minutes. Item 7, public question time. We have received some questions for tonight's meeting, so I will call up to start the process. If we could ask George Corrin, please, if you could come forward, if you're here. No, sometimes we do receive these online and people wish not to attend, especially with the current COVID situation. So the questions that are received will still be answered and appear in the minutes of this meeting, so they will be recorded. Judy Lundy. Likewise. Leisha Jack.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff. Since there's very few people here, I just wanted to congratulate the city on the Hammersley Golf Course design. It really, I haven't had a really close look at it, but from what I can see, officers have done an amazing job of, creating a development that's going to make a lot of profit for the city, and only appears to be taking out about 6 trees, which is testament to the officers. Well done.
Thank you.
Looks good. My questions all relate to the Mount Lawley Golf Club and their planned removal of 550 trees. Question 1. Do City of Stirling officers have delegated authority to approve multi-million-dollar master plans for A-class reserves / public open space on Crown land that are vested in the city, such as the 2015 master plan that is being implemented by the Mount Lawley Golf Club? If so, where is that authority stated and what exactly does it say? It isn't mentioned in the delegated authority register. I don't think I couldn't see it there.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the question, Ms Jack. The draft tree management plan and the golf course master plan are currently under review by the clubs. So my understanding is that that the 2015 master plan that you refer to is currently under review. The Mount Lawley Golf Club have sought to engage with the city and also with council on their progress of these documents. An invitation has been forwarded to council for a workshop where further detail on both of these strategies will be presented for council's consideration.
Ms. Jack.
Okay. It is the overarching master plan for everything they're doing, by the way. It is the role of CEOs to provide decision makers, councillors, with all relevant information on items that come before them so they can make informed decisions. So why won't councillors shown the Mount Lawley Golf Club's 2015 master plan, which has already been implemented, including the clearing and so on to create the 19th hole, especially before they voted last August to extend the club's lease from June 2029 to June 2044.
Thank you. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you. Council endorsed a lease extension for the Mount Lawley Golf Club in recognition of the substantial investment that the club has made into the course, the surrounding reserve and the facilities that support the club activities, and also in response to a need for further capital investment proposed by the club.
Was an approval ever issued to the Mount Lawley Golf Club to commence work on their 19th hole, which was the first part of their master plan, which is clearly stated by the club, and you know it's everywhere. And if so, on what date, and on whose authority?
Sure. Mr. Littleton?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'll probably just need to find the detail specifically, Ms. Jack, so happy to do that, happy to provide the response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Ames Springham, please. Thank you. And just your name and suburb to start.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Lynn Eames Springham, and I live in Jundanna. I'm a member of Mount Lawley Golf Club and joined in 1995. I'm a little nervous. I've never been to a council meeting before.
That's right. Just take your time and ask you questions.
Which tree policy documents and criteria does the City of Stirling use to determine why a tree would be allowed to be cut down? And will the same documents and criteria be used to evaluate the 554 trees that have been earmarked for removal by Mount Lawley Golf Club?
Yeah. Mr. Littleton?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. The City would consider the following documents: our street and reserve tree policy, our urban forest plan, our biodiversity strategy, as well as the Mount Lawley Golf Course lease agreement. We understand that the draft tree management plan prepared by the Mount Lawley Golf Club proposes approximately 550 tree removals over a 15-year period, being offset by in excess of 8,000 new trees being planted and 30,000 shrubs and ground covers also being planted. It's important to acknowledge that the draft tree management plan is currently under review, and the City is providing input into that process.
Thank you. My second question: would tree removal applications submitted to the Council by Mount Lawley Golf Club for the 64 large canopied trees that were cut down in 2020 and 21 and were permits issued? If so, who from Council would have approved and authorised the removals?
Thank you. Mr. Littleton?
It's acknowledged that 64 non-endemic tree species have been removed by the Mount Lawley Golf Club over the last 2 years. The Mount Lawley Golf Club have been working with the City's officers and the Friends of Inglewood Triangle to improve the natural biodiversity and conservation values of the course, and to date have planted 9,000 endemic trees and shrubs, including 2,700 high-value tree species. Tree removal applications are determined by Council's Delegate for Trees, which is the Manager of Parks and Sustainability here at the City. The City understands that only non-endemic trees dangerous or detrimental to playing areas have been removed.
Thank you. The Arbor Carbon Survey, dated October 2020, recommended the removal of 39 high-risk trees, and they included dead trees also. As of the 24th of January this year, only 7 have been removed, when 64 have been felled. An email to the General Manager of Mount Lawley on the 31st of January asked how the priorities of the removals were done. I've written in my question that apply was not forthcoming. I actually received an email yesterday at 11:59, 2 weeks after my email. Does Council know how Mount Lawley Golf Club prioritises their tree removals?
Thank you. Mr. Littleton?
Thank you for the question. I don't know the response to all of that question, but what I will say is that whilst the tree management plan is currently under review, and until that plan is agreed, the Mount Lawley Golf Club will focus solely on the high-risk tree removals and pruning highlighted in the Arbor Carbon report. So it's important to acknowledge until the tree management plan is reviewed and agreed, that is what will happen going forward.
Yeah, at present there are still two, if 15 months later there's still 2 high-risk trees on the course and other trees are being removed prior to the high-risk trees.
Thank you.
Happy to look into that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And we're happy to look into that and follow it up.
Thank you very much.
Kerry Hill? Is Kerry Hill? Thank you. Just your name and suburb, please. Oh, sorry, just turn it. Yep, that's it.
Kerry Hill, my suburb is Menora. I've likely haven't attended a council meeting before, so I'm a little bit nervous, so hang in there. I've been a member of Mount Lawley Golf Club for 55 years. My questions to the council are similar to Ms Jack's. Mount Lawley Golf Club has 2 documents titled Draft 15-Year Maintenance Plan. Has council seen the 40-page hole-by-hole aerial view of the proposed tree removals dated the 14th of the 1st, 2022, as well as the 2-page document with the same name?
Thank you. Mr Littleton?
Look, I received it today in response to your question, but my understanding is that the documents have been developed by the club to inform members of the tree and bushland management initiatives and proposals. So that, as I understand it, was the purpose of their preparing those documents.
Thank you. Is council aware that neither the proposed course master plan and the tree maintenance plan has not been approved by the members of Mount Lawley Golf Club?
No, and I guess we would obviously say that matter should be directed to the Mount Lawley Golf Club, but we have certainly taken on board the feedback we've been receiving and have asked for the urgent meeting to go through all of this with them.
Thank you.
Angie Cassian? Sorry, just put it back on. Yep, so that's right. Yep. So when you get, everyone just leaves it on and then we'll turn it off at the end. That'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. My name is Angie Cassian from Mount Lawley. Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff, and members of the public gallery. My 3 questions pertain to the removal of the 550 trees and the alarming loss of canopy from Mount Lawley Golf Club or golf course. My first question is, why are the 2,057 native and non-native trees identified by Arbor Carbon, the arborist, in the tree survey data spreadsheet not tagged with corresponding tree ID numbers on the golf course, as these trees are a valuable asset to this public A-class reserve, as well as the city's urban forest plan, which ensures the importance of tree species diversity?
Thank you. Mr Littleton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. Look, I don't have an answer. I'll take that question on notice. I'm not quite sure why all of those trees don't have tree numbers identified on them.
Thank you. My second question, how are the trees prioritised for removal, as Arbor Carbon report identified and recommended 39 high-risk trees, 34 trees requiring pruning of hanging deadwood, which posed a safety risk to members in their October 2020 report. Yet only 11 trees of the 64 already removed were considered high risk. The remaining 53 were not. These are in addition to the 550 scheduled for removal. How then now, 16 months later in February 2022, these high-risk trees and those with hanging deadwood are being removed, and yet members still do not know where these trees are located on the golf course, as no tree is tagged, which still poses a huge risk to members?
And thank you for that question. And all we can say with that one is we will follow it up. Our understanding is that they should be prioritising those trees, and none of the other trees will be felled until council sees this.
Thank you. My third question, how does a draft 15-year tree maintenance plan maintain trees? when in fact these 550 trees and their canopy will be removed from the Mount Lawley Golf Course that currently has tree-lined fairways for the past 50 years. All new plantings of small trees and shrubs will now be located only in the bushland area zones. It appears that the current tree maintenance plan is actually a tree removal plan.
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Thank you. Look, I think I've probably answered that question to some extent in my responses to the previous questions. As we've said, the draft tree management plan is under review. The Mount Lawley Golf Club have sought to engage with the city and with council directly on how we can move forward to achieve both, a great golf course as well as improving the urban canopy and the natural biodiversity of the golf course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Middleton. Hello.
Good evening. I'm Susan Middleton from Dianella, also a member at Mount Lawley Golf Course, and very nervous, my first meeting too. And I think now, just listening to all the questions, some of these may have been answered already. Should I still read them?
You can if you need to, but I would suggest if you want to either reword them or ask another question, they will still appear in the minutes of the meeting.
Well, I'll just read them because I'm a little bit nervous, and you can just say if you've already answered them. Can you please explain how and why 550 trees are being targeted for removal from the Mount Lawley Golf Course? This dialogue with the council with our concerns for our trees commenced mid-2021, and already the tree-lined golf course is now getting sparser.
And I can tell you that the golf course will be presenting their master plan to council shortly, so that council can get oversight of that.
Thank you. Question 2. Does the council consider the removal of the 550 trees with large canopies from a public A-class reserve to be a major development that will affect the whole city's community and adversely impact on the city's urban forest plan to increase tree canopy from 12 to 18%?
Thank you. Mr Littleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. Look, I think the question needs to be understood in the context within which the tree management plan is intended and will be carried out. It's important to remember that it is a draft tree management plan, but it is a 15-year strategy. It does talk about a substantial amount of renewal and with improvements to the urban canopy. So I think it's really important for us to balance the natural biodiversity and the improvements that we're trying to get more broadly from an urban forest, as well as the recreational reserve use that its members have grown to appreciate. So that will be what we're trying to achieve as we work through the draft tree management plan and the golf course master plan with the Mount Lawley Golf Club.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And question 3, are the council aware that it seems a lot of the removals are coinciding with the Mount Lawley Golf Club master plan that has not been signed off by the architect and is definitely not approved as yet, i.e. trees and shrubs have been removed already for linkways between holes, which is definitely related to the unapproved Master Plan 2015.
No, I wasn't aware, but Mr Littleton.
Look, the extent of removal, we are reviewing. I'm aware that the master plan is not finalised, and as you say, the golf course architect has been unable to complete the master plan. So I think the point is valid that ultimately the master plan should be completed and endorsed, and then the tree management plan should support the master plan. Those are the sorts of things that would be worked through with the club as we go through our consultation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do need, we have passed the time allocated for public question time, so I will rule to extend public question time. We only have half a dozen or so left, so if we can extend question time, I don't think we need a motion to do that, do we? And ask Roland Hadley to come forward, please.
Good evening all, Roland Hadley, Woodlands. At public question time, there are occasions when information is not readily available. The Council therefore then arranges to send a written reply. As all written replies are not included in the minutes, as it may take some time to formulate an answer, ratepayers are not always aware of the outcome. Therefore, I ask the Council to provide, supplementary minutes in future.
Thank you. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Where a question is taken on notice and it is not included in the minutes of the meeting, it will appear on the agenda for the following meeting, so that the answer will always be in the public arena, and I can show you where that's happened previously.
Okay, thank you. Question 2. Previously, I have queried the cost of repairs of the council vehicles in comparison to the budgeted figures. Can the council advise how many vehicles have been sent for repair in the previous financial year, the total cost, and what was the amount, was the amount within the budget figures? Yes. Also, similarly for this current financial year.
Yes, we're happy to provide you that in writing, Mr Hadley.
Thank you. Why is the agenda for the council meeting not made available at least 4 weekdays prior to the meeting?
It would be impossible 4 weekdays just because it comes following the committee meeting we have the prior week. So by the time it goes through agenda review and items are added to it, there's no possible way it could be available.
Surely it's possible, because a lot of the information on your previous meeting could this be simply transferred across?
No, there are quite often other items that appear on there as well, and discussion that occurs between there. So it would basically mean the day after the committee meeting for 4 working days. But it's 4 days before the actual meeting, so Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr Hadley. Simon Wheeler.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff and the gallery. Sorry, excuse me. My name's Simon Wheeler from Scarborough. This is my first meeting as well of the year. My first question, Mayor Owen, in regards to item 12.1 DS1 tonight, in the attachments talking about the development contribution plan, there's a worked example of an 8 stories and how much money that comes back to the city from an 8-storey development. Now, I've looked at the 12-storey one and done the same calculations, and a 12-storey development in the master plan in the zone would return about $101,000. If the city votes for the proposed development contribution plan tonight, what would the total windfall for the city be on, let's say, I don't know, a 44-storey development on the same 1,000 square metre block as per the example?
I'm guessing it's the same amount, Mr Roddick.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Wheel, for the question. Yes, it would be the same amount if it was in the 12-storey height limit where that application was to be considered. Now, a 44-storey building could be considered technically in any of those areas, but in terms of your question, if a 44-storey building was situated within the 12-storey base height limit area, it'd be subject to a contribution rate of $100.93.
101,000. Yeah.
Correct.
So for 44 stories, the contributions would be exactly the same as for 12.
That's
basically.
right, Mr Wheeler.
Okay.
See what you did there.
Mayor, my understanding from previous meetings was that if the city tries to alter the DCP, that this will increase the time frame for normalisation, that you can't just go chopping and changing it, which none of us wants. We don't want to increase the time frames, but the proposed DCP tonight includes removal of the works in kind provisions. So if this provision can be altered, why can't other changes be altered to stop the silliness I was just speaking of?
Thank you. And and I think it's more complicated. I'll get Mr. Rodich to comment, but the normalisation can still occur without the DCP coming across, but obviously then the city doesn't have the ability to collect the development contributions. So I won't delay the normalisation if that was delayed. Mr. Rodich?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Wheeler for the question. Yes, we have, as part of this proposal, recommended that the works in kind component of the DCP be removed. Now that's up to the Department of Planning whether or not they will support that. Yes, we could review how the DCP is calculated and, you know, have those discussions back with Development WA, but that would require substantial work. And I guess changing a DCP midstream through a redevelopment area, look, it's possible, but it's probably not the best planning outcome. You'd want to put it through a rigorous planning exercise and really look at how a future DCP could work for the area. And that's our premise of just taking this DCP over as it is. Look, normalisation would be best described as changing the decision maker, not the planning framework, including the DCP. That minor change to the works in kind we think makes sense, but still that may not be able to be changed either.
Mr. Wheeler?
Okay, thank you. Mayor, Councillor Farrelly declared an interest tonight, financial interest. Now I voted for Councillor Farrelly at the time, and in no small measure because of her, the fact that she lived in the area, she understood the area, she was vocal in her support for the best possible outcome for the Scarborough redevelopment zone. And now it appears that Councillor Farrelly, when disclosing her financial interest, can take no part in the discussions for the very thing that she was voted in to do. But what I noted is that in the Local Government Act, there are some interests that need not be disclosed. One of those is where an interest in common occurs. So you've got the 2,000 properties in the development zone and all the surrounding zones who have exactly the same issues, same interest in the proper developments of the zone. There's also an interest in the imposition of any rates or fees.
Sure. Can I cut you short though and suggest that you may well be putting Councillor Farrelly in a very awkward position with this. It is entirely appropriate for a councillor to decide whether they have an impartial or a financial interest, and the rules are very clear under the Local Government Act with severe penalties if someone doesn't. So Councillor Farrelly has chosen to do the right thing tonight, and I don't think it's fair to perhaps do this in a public forum like this. What I can tell you is that the Act is very clear and a councillor has to make that decision. But I'd also like to think that Councillor Farrelly has a lot more to contribute than just being voted for a DCP coming to the City of Stirling.
Can I continue, Mayor?
No, I prefer you didn't on that. I don't think you're going to do anyone any favours.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to do favours for ratepayers, Mayor Owen, including the ratepayers who voted and have a lot of respect
Mr. Wheeler, I know,
Councillor Farrelly.
I've been very clear. This council has respect for her too, but I think you're putting her in...
So you don't wish to
Mr. Wheeler,
answer the question,
Mr. Wheeler,
is what you're saying?
No, I don't. I think you're out of order, Mr. Wheeler. I've tried to be very subtle, and you're welcome to ask another question, but I don't think you should continue with this one.
Why not?
Thanks, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you.
Kieran Kelly.
Kieran Kelly, Scarborough. As spokesman for Sunsets Not Skyscrapers, I recently sent an invite to both Coastal Ward councillors seeking their attendance for a briefing meeting with our members on issues of concern within the area, within their ward, namely the city's normalisation progress down at the Scarborough beachfront, the development contribution policy, the proposed trench through West Coast Highway, the status of the development of the two hubs at Scarborough, and many other issues. I received a response from Councillor Farrelly stating that she could not attend and give up an up-to-date clarification on these matters due to the CEO giving instruction to all officers of the city, including directors and managers, not to comment.
Mr. Kelly, same as before, I don't think this is going to serve any purpose other than to upset councillors and perhaps get someone in trouble. So let's not go there.
It would be nice if the ratepayers knew why they're being muzzled. Okay, if you don't want to answer that one, I'll go to my next question. which is to do with the trench. If I can bring it up here. Will the council have a public meeting regarding the trench through West Coast Highway? I know the submissions close within a couple of weeks, and unfortunately I did put this question, I thought, before the council meeting last year, and this is the first one again that's come up. So would the Mayor consider that the council conduct a public meeting as part of the public consultation relating to the West Coast Highway trench proposal? If this is so, would the council be able to arrange the main roads, engineers and other appropriate staff, local state member for Scarborough, the State Minister for Transport, the Mayor and the Coastal Ward councillors from the City of Stirling staff that are to be engaged in that trench consultation, any independent traffic consultants?
The short answer is yes, we're happy to facilitate. Look, it's obviously not our project. I'll get Mr Rodich to provide some comment.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mr Kelly has the Mayor's pointed out, look, this is not a City of Stirling project.
I understand that.
The officers are happy to meet with any parts of the community and discuss the proposal. Look, I guess at the moment the community providing feedback through main roads as consultation. The city officers are in discussions with main roads. As you're aware, last year in September we provided a report to council about what the purpose of this consultation was, and that was to engage the community on a trench concept for the purposes of identifying a road reservation widening along West Coast Highway. Look, I guess I'm happy to have a look at what meeting we can facilitate, whether or not we get main roads on board there, or other political members, as you've discussed. We'll see what that means. Yeah, that's all I can say at this current moment.
Yep. Well, that'd be great if we could have a meeting on that. And my third question is that I sent I had a question about 4 or 5 months ago that I received a reply from governance regarding a house on the corner of Little Street and Newborough Street that has been in the phase of being built for the last probably 2 years with no action whatsoever. In that reply from governance, it was that they'd spoken to the owner and the builder and that work was going to be almost completed within the 3 months. I just let council know that no work has been done whatsoever on that house.
Thank you, Mr Kelly. I'll see Mr Rodich might have some information.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mr Kelly, so is that the property on the corner of Little Street and Jackson Avenue, I presume?
Newborough Street.
Newborough. Yes, we've been in discussions with the builder. The owner is currently seeking a revaluation of the property in order for the builder to complete those works. Our last discussions with the builder was approximately 2 weeks ago, and we expect to get a reply by mid-March from the builder on when works will continue on site. We're monitoring the site. As you'll be aware, it's a lot tidier than it was in terms of what's on the verge. Understand the state of the building itself, but we are monitoring that building.
Great.
Thanks, Mr Kelly. Robert Mitchell. Mr Mitchell.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff, public. I have one question.
Sorry, just start with your name and suburb, just for the record.
Oh yeah,
Thanks.
Robert Mitchell, Karrinyup.
Thank you.
One question. Has the council progressed the establishment of a City of Stirling Performing Arts Centre?
Yep.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mitchell, for the question. The City is doing a community infrastructure plan this year for the Stirling City Centre. That specifically includes the investigation of a performing arts centre that was put forward by Councillor Ree and Councillor Spagnolo. So that is about to proceed and should be completed by middle of this year.
Middle of where?
This year.
Middle of this year.
This year?
Yes, correct.
This year?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell. Arnold Davies.
Arnold Davies, Currinup. Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the gallery. What is the anticipated cost to the ratepayers for the methane gas continuing to emit from the old Hertha Road tip?
I don't know. Mr Littleton?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question, Mr Davies. It's always nice to see you on a Tuesday night. Look, at this stage, the landfill at Hertha is old, as you know, so the majority of the waste would have decomposed, which would reduce the amount of methane gas being generated by that site. It has been a capped landfill. So on that basis, whilst there may be some migration of methane out of the site, and we can get very technical if necessary, but there is no cost other than in carbon emissions and to methane actually being lost to the atmosphere. So there's no direct financial cost at this point in time, but I suspect that the generation of methane would be fairly minimal.
Thank you. How many ratepayers in the City of Stirling are not on the computers?
I don't know. We might have to respond to you in writing with that one, with an estimate. I can't imagine we would have an accurate amount.
I have had correspondence saying they had made all sorts of inquiries. I had asked them about checking out the Australian Commonwealth census information. Why weren't the people who have participated in the redevelopment of the Currinup Library Activity Centre not advised the redevelopment would or could result in the property being sold off, and a strong likelihood that a library would not be built on the site? This was a warning given to the council about 2016 by the former planning director, Mr Povey.
Thank you. I'm not sure what your question is, though, Mr Davies. A site can always be sold off, and there's no current plans to change the library.
Well, there's a activity discussions were held on the 27th of October, which I didn't get the notification until the day after it occurred. I was able to attend on the 8th of December.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not sure what your question is, Mr Davies.
Well, the people who participated in those discussions weren't advised that there was a likelihood that the redevelopment would be done by an outside body rather than the City of Stirling, that it would no longer become the property of the City of Stirling.
But that's not right. So there's no current plans for the City of Stirling owned land to be transferred to anyone or sold off. Well, the CEO was authorised in, I think it was 2017, to enter into negotiation to dispose of the library site. No, that's not true. So
it is correct. I was at the meeting when it happened.
No, I'm happy to provide clarification in writing. So we'll provide a full answer for that, but there's no plans and no negotiations have occurred.
I was present when the authorisation was given to the CEO.
But nothing's happened, Mr Davies. We'll provide it all in writing, though, for you.
I have asked questions even about the amount of money that was involved.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, that's all I've got on my list. Is there anyone else I've missed? If not, I will move on with the meeting. And I'll go on to item 8. Thank you, everyone. I'll go on to item 8 for application for leave of absence. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? There's no indication. I'll then go on to item 9, which is confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 7th of December 2021? Move Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Kristovich, and just a show of hands, all those in favour, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That takes us on to announcements by the presiding member. And I will just pull one up If you'll just bear with me. Tonight I did want to make mention about someone who passed away recently. I think it's appropriate this council makes a brief statement, and we did make one in the media. But the City of Stirling is very saddened by the news that the former City of Stirling Councillor and Deputy Mayor Troy Pickard has passed away recently. Mr Pickard served as the City of Stirling Coastal Ward Councillor and a Deputy Mayor between 2001 to 2005, before going on to serve as Mayor of the City of Joondalup for an incredible 12 years, elected in 2006 and subsequently re-elected in 2009 and 2013. And as Mayor Jacob recently mentioned, it was probably one of the most trying times for a local government, if anyone remembers the inquiries in Joondalup. And Troy is to be commended for the work he did to get Joondalup on track. Troy Pickard served the community of Stirling very well as a councillor and a deputy mayor, and went on to lead Joondalup for over the decade with distinction during the period of sustained growth and development, highlighted by winning the world's most livable city in 2011. During that time, the City of Stirling enjoyed a warm and productive relationship with Mr Pickard. During his presidency of WALGA, he fought against a plan to forcibly amalgamate local governments, and later as president of the National Local Government Association, he advocated for greater funding from federal government. In total, he serves as Deputy President for WALGA for 2 years and as President over 5 years, ALGA President for 2 years, and then on the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives for 4 years. He was the first West Australian Mayor to serve as ALGA President in 30 years and was appointed to the Australian Council of Local Government in 2008. Through the Tri-City Advocacy Alliance that the cities of Joondalup, Stirling and Wanneroo formed, the northern suburbs were able to lobby state and federal governments for more planning powers and significant additional funds. In more recent times, Mr Pickard worked in the private sector as a General Manager for Global Drone Solutions, the Civil Aviation and Safety Authority. The City of Stirling wishes to acknowledge the passing of a servant of Western Australia, Vale Troy Pickard. I'll now move on, change of pace, to item 11. Unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Item 12, reports and recommendations of committees. We now move on to items from the Planning and Development Committee. Any alt recs submitted to governance prior to midday have been included in your running sheets. None of the items are required to be pulled out. Councillors, are there... Thank you. 12.1 DS1 has a financial interest, so it is now required to be pulled out. Are there any other items that you wish to pull out, councillors? Councillor Ree?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to pull out 12.1 DS4. And if we don't pull it out, does that mean that the recommendation goes with what's in the... sorry, my apologies.
That's all right.
Does that mean if we don't pull it out that the recommendation such as 12.1 CF1 goes what's in committee, or...?
Yes.
So not the return alternative?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Just that one, and you're pulling out 12.1 DS1. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other indication, can I just have a little wave from home just to make sure you can hear me on Zooms? Yep. Good. Yep, just double checking. All right, so we'll go to the first item, noting that Councillor Farrelly has left the chamber on item 12.1 DS1, the Local Planning Scheme number 3, amendment number 124. As chairman of the committee, Councillor Migdale, if you'd like to move the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the alternative recommendation for this item, if you can get that on the board governance, that council defers preparation of Local Planning Scheme number 3, amendment number 124, and that the Chief Executive Officer writes to Development WA to request it redraft the Scarborough Developer Contribution Plan to modify the method of calculating development cost to require a contribution rate that is proportionate to the number of stories proposed.
Thank you. And I can see Councillor Proud indicating that she'd like to second that. She's right here. But I will just, before we go on to ask if anyone's opposed, this is different than the committee recommendation. No, I'm not worried because it's not up for debate. It's more that the committee chair is supposed to move the committee recommendation. So I know that officers have been involved in this, so I wouldn't mind just getting clarification of what the implications are on this from the officers, if I could, please.
Clarify the process first.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So let's get clarification of what the ramifications are of this. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, the only, I guess, the key ramification of this alternative recommendation is that it will delay the normalisation process somewhat, depending on what the outcome is in discussions with Development WA. That's the only ramification. Can it be done? Yes, it can. Has it been done before? Yes, it has. City of Armidale have the same issue in terms of their redevelopment area and are looking at the developer contribution plan in that locality. So this can be done. It will, however, hold up normalisation, and yeah, that's the only ramification.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to this? Councillor Ree? Yep, so we've got someone opposed though, so I'll go to Councillor Migdal as mover of this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, as far as I'm concerned, this recommendation makes a great deal of sense and speaks for itself. I don't think that it requires me to talk to it ad nauseum. Rather, if anyone was to read the recommendation, they would understand that it does make sense and that it should be proportionate to the number of stories proposed. Speaks for itself. Nothing further, I'll reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Proud?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I fully support the alternative. It's a very worthy question and alternative to actually write a letter and just seek some advice. Yes, it may well delay the process somewhat. I wouldn't think a letter is going to drag it out too long. I mean, I don't want to see a delay either, really, but this is worthwhile. As Mr. Wheeler has pointed out in his questions, and we all know anyway, going up to DCPs up to 12 stories, and we're looking, you know, down the barrel of 44 maximum, I think we've seen to date. So there's a significant shift there in what developers are seeking and the actual payout and payback. So I think it's in Stirling's best interest, and overall it's in the residents' and ratepayers' best interest at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ree?
Thank you. I'd like to foreshadow the officer's recommendation on page 9, please, which is also the recommendation from committee last week, please.
Noted.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, yes, this could delay the process. It will delay the process. And that's one of the biggest problems we've got. Everybody has seen the issues in Scarborough and a lot of other places where Development WA has been. And whatever they decide, it becomes a problem for the local government. Local government are the ones that have got to hear the complaints because state government just dismisses it. So we need to bring it back. It's our Scarborough. We started it with the coastal plan. We started it with the Seas project. We started it with ratepayers' money. That's how it started. It's in our backyard. It's supposed to be showcasing the whole of the city. It's supposed to be a citywide project above wards. Lots of wards are donating towards Scarborough and don't get anything back. I just like to add that one. But I do believe that this time, especially with COVID and everything else like that, we need to regain our power. It is so important to take it back right now before anything else changes, especially with the, and I shall use the word emergency provisions of state government. We don't have any idea what's going to go on with their property. They are chopping down trees, they're changing their mind, they're building whatever they like, all to do with whatever they want to do. We need to regain Scarborough back. We need our ratepayers to know that it's their money, it's their turf, and we make the decisions. And I think that in this day and age is so, so important. I also believe from a lot of the comments that have been made about the various facilities down at Scarborough and what we can get in the future and at what we attract. It's a lot harder to do when we've got a third wheel. It's like the third-party appeal rights. It's like saying to the ratepayers, oh, well, you can go and do that, but, you know, you've got about 10 people to complain to and don't talk to us. They pay their rates to us. Let's stop the rot and just make it the City of Stirling, Scarborough, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Ree, noting that you foreshadow the officer's recommendation. Councillor Sargent, you had a question? And then I'll go to Councillor Christovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But you're welcome to debate as well, obviously.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
why not? Let's, look, I do agree with the motion on the board. There's a risk attached to this motion, as Mr. Wheeler brought up in his question time. If we allow it to go through to the keeper, then the risk is we're only going to get 12 stories contribution when someone applies to 44. My question was, what kind of delay on time is this going to cause? Now, writing a letter to Development WA, as Councillor Proud said, shouldn't take too long. But what if the answer comes back with, yeah, actually, we should have a look at it? How far down the road are we kicking the can?
Thanks. Mr. Rodish?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor started a very good point there. It really would depend on Development WA's response. Once we do get that response, we'll bring it back to Council as soon as possible, because there is the concern that the Minister does have the power to normalise the area and place that planning framework back under the City of Stirling control without a DCP. And then we lose all opportunity to recover costs. So in terms of my comment before, look, this probably, there's no risk with this recommendation as long as it's followed through and not just left. And look, that you can leave that with my department to do. But we'll bring back the response from Development WA, because if they had to revisit how the DCP is calculated, they largely have to revisit how the planning framework works for the area. From my discussions with Development WA and the Department of Planning, there would be no appetite for that.
Councillor Sargent, you happy with that?
Yeah, and that's my worry.
Thank you. Councillor Christovich?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple of questions as well of the officers. Sure. In terms of the DCP that's currently in place, and if the developments were within the parameters that are currently in that DCP, i.e. 12 stories, the $19.1 million that's meant to be coming back as a result of these developments back to the City of Stirling, how long would it take to get that $19.1 million back if the plan was being followed as it is now?
None of us will be here. Mr. Rodish?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've had, quotes of 200 to 250 years away if you get the rate of development as it has occurred so far. At the moment, we've only had, $350,000 or so in the fund and limited development. So if development, the rate of development occurs as it has, we won't see that money for a long, long time.
Okay, so second question is, if the DCP was to be amended by Development WA under this proposal, in the parameters within which the other payments are being made, would we be getting much more money than we're getting at the moment? And would the time frame reduce from 200 years down to 10 years?
Mr. Rodish?
Through Mr. Mayor, look, I couldn't answer that question. It would have to depend on, what they want to put in the calculation. It really depends on the calculation. That calculation was done just on a square metre rate of the property and the height allowed for on a lot, and it was done broadly across the redevelopment area. It didn't take into consideration properties which are strata titled, which may not be redeveloped, and as Mr. Willard pointed out previously, developments which have had additional height beyond the base height allowed.
Thank you. So look, just based on that information alone, I think it's better for the council to actually take control back of this area and to normalise it now, because if we're talking about sending it back to Development WA, them tinkering around the edges, it's going to take 200 years for us to get our $19.1 million back. Isn't it better for us as a council to take control, to be able to then adjust those development contributions and work within whatever planning frameworks we can, so that we can maximise the benefit for the community there? Because at the moment, they haven't got a line of sight of what's going on. Development WA is doing whatever they like, approving whatever they like, and we have no say in the matter at all. So as much as we might be talking about developer contributions, this is very insignificant in its current structure with Development WA, and I don't think that they're really going to give this much of a priority. It's really, they're keen to send it back to us. This is not going to be a priority for them. Financially, it's not going to make a big difference if they tinker with it, and there's a lot more we as a council can do, not just about development contributions, but within the local planning framework itself to try and make things better for the people in Scarborough. And at the moment, they're not being given that opportunity, and the longer we delay this, the less chance they're going to have for that. So I don't think these few dollars that we're talking about under the current setup is going to make a huge difference, and we really need to go back and reset this and make sure we've done a proper process and come up with the best results for the ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other indication from Chamber? Councillor Sandri.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just got a question for the Director of Planning. How long would it take City of Stirling to actually change the DCP if it was under our control in terms of approval from WAPC?
Mr Roddick.
We're talking about 5 to 10 years, potentially.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
There you go. Try this one.
Is that on now? Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, Councillor Sandra, yeah, look, it's unknown how long it will take. What I could tell you will take I'd say a good 12 months for the City of Stirling to first of all work out how that developer contribution plan would work, look at what infrastructure we need in the area, look at how we should calculate that, look at the planning framework if we were to take control. So in terms of the proposed recommendation from the officers is that, of course, we'd have to do an annual review in that first year of the DCP, and that would be significant work to work out how does the contribution rate work and also the planning framework. How long it would take to deal with the Department of Planning. Look, I probably wouldn't think it would be 5 to 10 years, but look, years wouldn't be outside.
Councillor.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I did already declare the interest on this item. It's impartial because I see on LRC. So the reason why this alternative came about was directly in relation to committee last week, and there was a lot of discussion around the DCP, how long it was going to take in terms of recovering the money that the City of Stirling has put into this development, and the DCP was part of the negotiation in terms of getting Dev WA there, in terms of developing Scarborough. So it is a critical element, and it is money that was always expected to come back to the city. And I'm probably not lengthening the story by saying that most councillors at that point in time didn't think it was going to take 200 to 250 years for the DCP to be collected. On that premise, all this is doing is asking Dev WA, will you consider adjusting the DCP? They're a state government agency, so they have greater visibility with the Minister and the Department of Planning in order to shorten that time frame for a DCP amendment. Whereas I understand from the community discussion is that the city does not have the staff at the moment to do the DCP. It's a specialised area. It's actually quite complex, and it will take us some time. That's the reality of it. We don't have an existing DCP in the City of Stirling to reference from. We're relying on what others have done, and we need to get the proper professionals in place to do that, and it's going to cost us money and our ratepayers money. So this is simply just asking Development WA. They want to hand over Scarborough. We know that. They want this to hurry up as quick as possible. They're motivated to hand it over. So if they do wish to hand it over, and one of the conditions is they have to adjust the DCP aligned with what we would like, which is making it proportionate to the number of stories, they may have an ability to shorten that period and get it done in a quicker period than what we could ever imagine. But we don't know unless we ask the question, and the question hasn't been asked, and I feel that we are doing a disservice to the City of Stirling residents generally by just suggesting, yes, we're going to take it on and absorb all the costs attached to it, as opposed to putting it back on Dev WA and asking the question. It's only going to cost us maybe a month or 2 months to get the letter out, get an answer back, and then for us to reconsider what that answer may be. I do hope Development WA come to the party, because I feel the city has come to the party the entire time in this partnership with Development WA. So I would hope that they would come back and say, yes, we're amenable to changing the DCP, and they're amenable to shortening that time frame in order to get it facilitated quicker. But we won't know unless we ask the question, and that's why this alternative is being put forward, and I'll be supporting it for that reason. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there any other? Councillor Hatton?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. It's all about normalisation, and
if there was a risk involved in this alternative, I'd be quite worried. But my understanding is that there is no risk in that alternative as long as we attend to it and we don't let it lapse, or we don't, we need to attend to it in a very prompt manner. Is that correct?
Mr. Roddick?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Haddon, look, as the recommendations proposed there, look, it's only deferring consideration of, or preparation of Amendment 124, subject to the city writing to Development WA. Look, I understand the concerns of all council and, of course, my directorate that, look, we'll make sure that correspondence is sent to Development WA and followed up very quickly, and we'll provide feedback back to council and come back to council with the response from Development WA. Look, if it's a month or 2 months, look, it's not a significant time in the normalisation. It would just be that process. If council then decide not to do it, well, that's up to council at a future date. So I'm happy to write the letter and bring the information back.
No risk involved then, really? No.
That's
thanks.
Councillor Haddon, you happy? Is there any other indication in the chamber or online? No, in that case, I will go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have very much more to add. I think that this has been succinctly and robustly debated. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's go ahead and get this letter drafted to Dev WA and see if we can't just get this turned around in the quickest possible way to benefit all residents and ratepayers across the City of Stirling. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that closed debate. So we have the motion on the table. The moved Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Proud. There is a foreshadowed motion from Councillor Ree. I will put that motion. All those in favour, please. If I can just start at home. Councillor Proud, Councillor Migdale, Councillor Ferrante. This is all those in favour of the motion of the alternative rec. The motion from Councillor Migdale and Councillor Proud. Yes. Oh, sorry, councillors. Yeah, show of hands. Yep. Because we've got the people at home. People at home, I've counted you. This is still 4. Councillor Hatton, Councillor Perkoff, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Sandri, Councillor Olo, Councillor Thornton, Councillor Criado, Councillor Sargent, and against we have Councillor Ree, Councillor Kristovich and myself. That motion is carried. We'll now go, we can invite Councillor Farrelly back in too, if we could, please. And then we'll move to item 12.1 DS4. Councillor Migdale, if you get ready on page 68.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you ready?
No, sorry, I'll come to you in a sec. We're just looking for Councillor Farrelly. All right, Councillor Farrelly has returned. So we're on item 12.1 DS4, page 68, been pulled out by Councillor Ree. Councillor Migdale, as Chair of the Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the committee's recommendation on page 69. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lagan. Opposed? Councillor Ree. I'll go to you, Councillor Migdale.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This item was again discussed at length at committee last week, and committee could find no reason for this not to be approved, as was the recommendation by officers. It is it's an after-school care facility. The same operator runs after-school facility in Inglewood. As you would all be aware, the City of Stirling is no longer offering that when we used to. There are no issues that we could find with this application. So I'll be interested to hear why anyone would be against this item. I'll reserve. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan.
No, I'm happy to second and support, and with the conditions that are shown in the officer's recommendation, I'm happy with those.
Thank you. Councillors, can I just ask everyone else to stop chattering? It's quite hard to hear with we're doing the Zoom as well, and I know the sound isn't 100%. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. First, can I ask the question first? Why would the three car parking? Oh, my apologies. Why would the three parking bay be the cost for those be waived first, please?
Mr. Rodich?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ree, the officers have carried out an assessment of the parking. The parking provided on site is sufficient, and there is no need for those additional 3 car bays to facilitate 10 additional children on site. The officers have reviewed the history to the site, how the site works, and are satisfied that the parking provided on site is satisfactory. So council can waive the requirement for cash in lieu and support the parking shortfall.
Councillor Ree?
Thank you. On page 73, we've got the objections. 6 people.
Sorry, Councillor. Councillors, please, on that side. We can't hear. Thank you. Councillor Ree?
On page 73, we've got 6 people who took the time to actually put in some objections. And for those that, even if they haven't been around the table, but have been in the community, and if they've ever read anything in the local papers around Mount Lawley, they will know Clifton Crescent features regularly with regard to issues with traffic, noise, ingress, everything. And I feel very sorry for the people in that street, because just being round here, I know that we talk about it a lot. One of the comments is the current traffic users of Clifton Crescent do not allow for safe ingress or egress to the site. Patrons travel this portion of Clifton Crescent at high speed. This has not been addressed in all this time, and now we're going to add to it with more children. And the fact that 6 people took the time that live locally to say no to it, I think should be respected. The other thing is on the parking shortfall on page 74, it's interesting that it notes that due to a high-frequency bus route along Beaufort Street, you've reduced one of the car parking bays. I don't know how many people would run to a childcare centre, get off a bus, take their kid to a childcare centre and get back on the bus. Interesting. I don't need a comment though, but that's interesting. A bit like having a car parking across the road from a childcare centre that got approved, which is also very strange. I don't feel having the childcare centres are just popping up so much in the suburbs, the issues with the parking, the issues with the residential. We have raised it before about the issue of childcare centres in the residential areas. It was not too bad when they were only family, because that was only 3 or 4 kids. Now it's getting quite out of control. People are dropping off kids at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's kids at night, and we don't have any childcare police that are going to go over there and count kids. It doesn't happen. You've got to wait for people to complain, which isn't good. And I've had people who've got quite upset about this one, along with all the other childcare centres.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yeah, your point of order, Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, the council's made the comment that they're popping up everywhere. This centre was already there.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, Councillor Ree, if you can keep the debate, I understand you're trying to make a point, but the debate on this one was very clear at committee, and this is an established childcare, so it's not one popping up, and there are no issues and there are no complaints about this, and it's not about any massive changes. It's just about a small increase in the number of children. Over to you.
I believe that the comments made by those people that actually wrote in said object.
Yep.
Wouldn't object mean they didn't want it?
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor.
So.
No, that's fine, but you made some other comments afterwards.
Well, I meant popping up as in the sense that generally...
No, let's just move on.
This is getting bigger. That's why I prefaced it, if we were listening, that if it was a family daycare centre when they were smaller, people didn't have as many problems. But they're getting bigger. This is the issue. And I think that I have no problem with the existing side. I just don't feel it needs to get bigger. My other comment is on page
This isn't getting bigger,
78.
it's just some more children. That's what I'm trying to make it.
Well, that makes it bigger with more children, which means more drop-offs, which means more cars, which means more carbon dioxide, means everything. On page 78, I thought it was interesting, because the delegated authority provided to officers do not apply to a previous decision of council, where it's considered that the proposed amendments will have a greater impact. I would have thought that then this maybe would have to have been revoked before we put in another one under our standing orders. But the way that's written, that the officers didn't have the power because of the original approval had X.
We're fine. Everyone's happy with the process, and it's before council right now. Let's continue with this.
Just a point I was making sure of. So
I'm comfortable.
I think going the fact that Clifton Crescent is always busy, the fact that the people took the time, that the 6 people who applied all objected to it, I've got no problem with what it is right now. I just don't like the idea of getting bigger. And that goes back to my original comment. When there were family daycares, they were small. I don't think we have many issues.
Thank you. And seriously, councillors, the third time. I know you think you're only mumbling. It is extremely loud and I've got to try to listen to people. Councillor Migdale, to close, unless someone else wishes to debate this. Councillor Ferranti?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Oh, was there somebody else wanted
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Ferranti first and then I've got Councillor Hatton.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to add a little bit to this. These days, the working families require additional services to assist and cover for, looking after their kids. And in recent times, the COVID examples of schools sending children home to be isolated, and the parents would have to take time off work. These types of services, however, I do understand Clifton Crescent is problematic, but there's a number of reasons why it's problematic. It's not just because there are additional children going into this daycare centre, after school care. It's there for working adults that need support to have their children somewhere safely, being managed and looked after. So my view is that, weighing up the potential issues that were mentioned tonight, I see the positives of the parents and accessibility to more services as also a priority. However, I do understand, if I can ask the officer a quick question, the accessibility point for this particular location can actually go into a rear lane as well, which is at the rear of this premise. Is that correct?
Mr Roddick?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct, Councillor Ferranti. You can have access from Clifton, but also from the rear laneway. Largely how the car parking is set up on site, it's more of a one-way access point coming through the laneway, parking on the bays and exiting through Clifton.
Yeah, thank you for that. And look, that takes the additional stress off Clifton Crescent as well as the laneway, which has been there for a long time, and accessibility of the rear has been there for quite a while. So I'm giving this my support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hatton as indicated. I've seen you, Councillor Proud.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I just want to make a point that last year you would know that I quite heavily debated not having a childcare centre down the road here, and it took quite a bit of convincing to other councillors as to why that childcare centre should not be there, and fortunately we got over the line for it not to be built. That particular childcare centre that I was debating was going to be built on a roundabout, a very, very small roundabout, where the egress and ingress was just totally unsuitable. I'm not against childcare centres. This childcare centre doesn't seem to have a problem with the egress, doesn't seem to have a problem with a lot of other things. Every childcare centre is assessed on its position, locality, merits, getting rid of waste, all sorts of parking issues. There doesn't seem to be issues with this one, and I certainly think that we should go ahead and vote according to the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Proud.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to make a very quick point on the last sentence in last paragraph on page 75. The city's records indicate that there have been no complaints made to the city related to car parking associated with the existing centre.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there any other indications? If not, I will go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Now, I just want to point out a point of clarification, as it were. This is not a traditional childcare centre, but rather an out-of-school hours care for local children who attend local schools. It is operational between, I think it's, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. 7 a.m. And yes, to 9 a.m. And there's nobody there between 9 and 3 because the kids will then come in again after school. So just bearing in mind, it's only 100 or 200 metres away from Mount Lawley Primary and close to other local primary schools. PC is around the corner as well. This is a before school and after school care scenario here. So it's not an all-day daycare event. It is for those people who have to be at work at 6 a.m. and so they are not able to get their kids off.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor. What's your point of order?
My point of order is it clearly states that it's open from 7 to 6 p.m. It doesn't. Oh, sorry. It does. It says it clearly states it's open from 7.
Okay.
It does not state that it's only for after school
okay,
before
okay,
kids, which I think makes
thanks,
a
Councillor.
significant
Take a
difference.
seat. Mr Rodich, can you just give some clarification on that? I've got a feeling you're talking about school holidays. Mr Rodich?
Through Mr Mayor, the childcare centre operator has stated that they do provide before and after school care and minimal activity during the day. However, the conditions of approval would allow them to operate between 7am and 6pm.
Thanks. All right. Continue, Councillor Migdale.
Okay. Basically, I'm looking at page 84 of the agenda, just for clarification. And also, when referencing those people that have also put their hand up and shown concern to Clifton Crescent, I just want to make a point that I too agree that there must be changes made to this particular street in terms of for safety purposes. So I 100% concur with that. However, that is not what we are discussing here tonight with this item. What we are discussing here tonight is this particular facility being able to operate and certainly house children in the early hours, in the later hours, keeping in mind that there is a daycare centre next door, which has always been all hours daycare, which has been around for a very long time, where people do tend to park on the street. So there may be some confusion in responses. I'm just flagging that as we did at committee. This makes perfect sense to me, and I know the area very well and see no reason why it shouldn't be approved this evening. I hope you support the item.
Thank you. And with that, that does close debate. Thanks, Councillor Migdale. And I will now put that item, move Councillor Migdale, second to Councillor Lagan. If those on Zoom can just show me your hands first, so I can. Good. Thank you. And those in the chamber, all those for? Councillor Farrell, are you voting on this one? Are you? No. Okay, and thank you. And against? Thank you. So we have Councillor Farrell recorded against and all other councillors voting for it. That was my jaw dropping. Are you sure? So you're voting for it?
I think the difference is that the difference is, well, based on the complaints and everything, but I think Councillor Migdale hit the nail on the head when she said that people might get confused with the people next door. And if this is only used mainly for...
Okay, we finished debate. I just wanted to clarify.
I think that's fine. So that's the difference.
Right.
However, I still sympathise with Clifton Crescent, as Councillor Migdale said too.
No, I appreciate it, but that's as a committee recommendation that's approved.
That was got me over the edge.
We all just lost 15 minutes of our lives. All right, thank you, councillors. So with that, that takes us to the balance of reports. And Councillor Migdale, as chair of the committee, if you'd like to now move the balance of reports.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the balance of reports by exception resolution.
Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Proud. And just a show of hands, councillors. This is for the balance of reports. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Members of the gallery and those at home, please be advised the remainder of the Planning and Development Committee items have been adopted by exception resolution. We'll now move on to item 13, reports for consideration in accordance with 4.24 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law. And the first one of those is 13.1, the Local Government Act 1995 submission on proposed reforms on page 153. Councillors, do I have a mover of a motion, please? Councillor Lagan.
I'll move the report recommendation.
Thank you. And is there a seconder? Councillor Hatton. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Ree. Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, there's been considerable debate, a number of workshops, and I believe very solid contribution by all the elected members that attended both committee meetings where the items were discussed and where the workshops gave another opportunity for the items to be discussed. It was good to have the comparison to the Wolga recommendations, and although some of the City of Stirling results or end decisions were slightly different, I think they are best reflective of this council and of the ratepayers of this council, and important for us to give that feedback with no fear or favour and make it clear to the Minister that there were certain items within the recommendations that we still had some issues with. I'm happy that we forward this recommendation submission to the Minister and that we move from there.
Thank you. Councillor Hatton.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I support this obviously, but there are over 10 areas to be looked at, and some of those areas, actually only a couple of the areas are to be looked at in more detail. The others are for Council and Walga to consider and maybe do a lighter look at. So there's certainly things to be done, to be looked at, but I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. When this was first brought to Council in November last year, it was asked if we could have a workshop. It was a bit unfortunate. It took 11 weeks to have a workshop only last week, which, as mentioned today, those around the table, I think, enjoyed themselves with making a lot of good comments. So what was upsetting was the fact that the comments that we made didn't come back to us in order for us to look at until this was put into the agenda. So there are a few things that were, in my opinion, that still needs to be put in, and if the mover and the seconder are happy with that. On page 259, where we've got and I thank Mr Blanchard for putting the tracking changes in, where we've got, we don't have a number, but towards the bottom, the appointee shall not be made by the Minister alone. Whether or not we did discuss it, that because they did say the department to be more definitive, if you're going to go against something or you're going to agree with, be definitive, whether or not we can actually put in there Public Sector Commission. So we've said we don't want it to be a ministerial appointment, but we've got by either Parliament or a Governor in Council. Can we write in there Public Sector Commission as we discussed the other day, please?
Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it would be unlikely that the appointment would be made by the Public Sector Commission, but we can certainly add that in if Council considers that it's an option that it wishes to add in.
Councillor Lagan and Hatton, are you happy to add that in?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd need further commentary from Councillor Rhea. I'm not sure that it's even needed. If you look at the comment on that same page, it talks about the appointment process and some of the issues we may have. I'm not sure how that addition makes this any more rigorous than it otherwise is, and I'm not sure, as Mr Blanchard said, that it's going to be, any appointment will be made under the public sector standards. Yeah. Anyway.
Councillor Rhea, are there any other additions you wish to raise?
Just thought, because it does say Parliament or Governor in Council, that still politicises it, which is what we're trying to get away from. By saying it's Public Sector Commission, we make the intent quite clear. So that's why I was trying to put that in there. With page 265, the presiding member will be left second-guessing their decisions at meeting, refrain from using these powers. If such a system introduced, the City considers the terminology of a red card should be changed to a caution or warning. I think it was said right around the table that we didn't agree with the red card. So I think that needs to be definitive in there.
I think down the bottom, doesn't it say this is not supported?
But no, it just says that red
No, but the
card
actual
should be changed.
the recommendation from Council, I haven't got it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure underneath it says this is not supported.
It just said, well, I'm reading it, page 265, it says that it considers the terminology of red card should be changed to a caution or warning. But we actually, page 265, people.
So I've got the first line, the City does not support the red card system.
Yeah,
it can't be any clearer.
But down the bottom we've got red card should be changed to caution or warning.
That's the additions you wanted in. But this is the issue. I want to make it really clear. I understand what you're trying to do, and I understand We have 14 councillors with slightly different views, and there may be some who are actually opposed to a couple of the city's views on this. But by wordsmithing a document like this, everyone's going to want their word in or something, and this is the issue. The more words and phrases that are added in, it not only waters down the intent, remembering that the minister has to look at 138 councils worth, plus individuals from councils, plus individuals from the public. I think the most important thing we can do is have a united voice, which I was actually very impressed with the submission to get to a fairly strong voice on a lot of this. But just be cautious in changing words. You will actually water down the intent because there becomes 5 paragraphs rather than saying the city does not support this system.
I think that's actually my point, because if we've got up the top, don't have the red card, why should we have down the bottom if you've got change it to caution or warning? Then
Because that's what you decided at the workshop, councillors.
So we decided on both. That's sort of...
We didn't want the terminology of red
Yeah.
card.
No, we didn't want it. Didn't want it full stop. Page 266. This considers the CEO should be required to notify the mayor of a vexatious complaint referred to the inspector. Well, we did discuss what happened when the CEO is the vexatious complainer. Where does that go? Wasn't that supposed to be there somewhere for the administration?
Well, that goes straight to the council. The council employs,
Well, we did talk about that.
hires and fires the CEO.
Well, then that should be written there, shouldn't it? No?
No, it's in the Act.
Well, doesn't do it. Page 273, totally oppose the public question time limit to a maximum time for public question time, 1 hour for band 1. I think Councillor Hatton made the comment that according to the annual report we had 9, and I could be wrong, 39. But we had 900 people come, which averaged 18, wasn't it your comment? Yep. Averaged 18 a meeting. We've got 250,000 residents. Quite often, we don't have very many. I mean, we've got 1 in the gallery right now. Thank you, Mr. Davies. But we've got 1 person. Unless there's a major issue, we don't have a lot of people, which comes back to a management issue. So I think we still need to have the right. So I would be totally against us putting in a time frame there for a council as big as us, because some of the one hour for band 1...
So again, councillor, this is the issue.
I want it deleted.
I understand that, but you started the debate by saying that council wanted to workshop this. Council workshopped this and came up with this. This wasn't made up by an officer sitting. This was brought up by councillors, which is why it's a track change in this item. So I understand you may not want it, but my understanding is the fact that it's in here means the majority of all these people did want it.
Can I just...
No, you can't, councillor, at the moment.
The tracking, when it came to the workshop, which was 11 weeks after we asked for the workshop, 1 week before
let's get clarification on this.
For the questions.
Yeah, but I want to be clear on that too. I want to be clear on this. You're making out like the administration held off a workshop. Let's be very clear. This council, as soon as a new CAC came out, while other councils were wondering what to do, you had a full brief within weeks of it coming out prior to Christmas and a full workshop with lawyers there. And you were present? Following that, a submission was going to go and councillors asked for more time so they could understand this. Not for the officers or administration to understand it. Councillors wanted time. So it was appropriate with Christmas time to say to you, wait some weeks over Christmas, get a better understanding. There is no hurry. The extension went to the minister. The minister extended the deadline. So there hasn't been a rush for this. So it got put out. You had a lawyer work through this. You had a lawyer give their take on it. You asked questions. We've then had a time for you to read and understand and ask as many questions of anyone you want for this. Then it went to a workshop. And you, as a council, came up with these track changes, which is before us tonight. I just want to be clear of that. So there's no magic here. Now, if council decides tonight that they don't want that track change in there, that's up to council. But my only comment is, unless I can get comment from someone else, that was about because that was a majority decision tonight. Can I just speak? Yeah, Mr. Blanchard, let's get clear. So let's get clear. No, this isn't up for debate at the moment.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Divining the majority view of councillors at a workshop is a skill that I'm yet to perfect. I think we've done a reasonably good job of it. We did identify that in relation to public question time, there were diverse views from elected members. There was no sense in the room of a single view. I have stated at page 157 of the agenda that there were diverse views from elected members. I've set out 4 options in relation to public question time and made 1 recommendation in relation to those options. That was the only issue on which, to me, it wasn't clear that there was a fairly consistent view from councillors, and as a result, if another option is preferable to council, then I'd suggest that council insert that into the submission. So that's page 157 of the agenda.
So right now it's in here. What I don't want to do is have this be voted against by people who I know who actually probably want to vote for the submission as a whole. So if I can just ask, first of all, just a show of hands, this is just an informal poll just to see. Do councillors want a time frame? The blue track changes here on page 273. Those who wish this to remain in the submission, just show me with your hands up, please. Well, I know what I'm... No? Okay, thank you. Who would be happy for this to come out? So there's no time frame for question time? Okay, put your hands down. This is the issue we've got. There's no majority. So I will ask the mover and seconder, are you happy for that to stay in, or would you like to remove it?
Mayor, I'd like it to remain as it is. We already have vehicles via local laws and the vote of the elected members for extension of time at meetings to control that. And I think that's a good reflection of the debate. To take it out suggests that we didn't have a debate.
Okay, that's perfect. So Councillor Reid, you can carry on with your debate now.
I think that, doesn't this imply that you can't extend it? If you make this in as one ban, that means you can't extend, isn't that correct?
Yes, a suggestion.
So that means that if you go ahead with this 1 hour ban, that means it cannot be extended at all?
Yeah, it depends what the Minister thinks. That was a recommendation from this council.
No, I meant in the sense that Councillor Lagan made the comment that you can extend it even if it goes an hour. Is that correct? I don't think it is.
No, I think he was saying we can extend it now. I think he was insinuating that we can extend it now. But Councillor Reid, let's keep debating the item. It's good. Yep, it's in there.
Page 277. The discretion should be retained by the local to determine items that may be dealt with confidentiality. The process of seeking consent from the inspector supports the confidentiality, limited details, different financial thresholds, different factual thresholds. Now, I tried to get a definition of confidential and on why things can be confidential or not confidential, but I don't think this tidies it up. And I know we went around the corner and I've been to Walga meeting and everything on this, and there doesn't seem to be a consensus of how to write this, but I don't think this still captures the intent of what the definition of confidential is. And I know you don't want wordsmithing, but I just think that that, to me, is still an issue and is not addressing the issue.
Thank you.
So I don't know if anyone else wants to talk.
Is that your debate finished?
Yeah, I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer. This is, the city conditionally supports this one. Councillor Farrelly has indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to reiterate the one about the questions where people come into the gallery and ask questions. They are electors and ratepayers, and I heard 3 or 4 people today who have never been in before, 1 or 2 around my age, and that indicates to me they felt quite passionately about a situation and they've come through. Now, if they were 3 or 4 of 40, you might say, well, they can't actually, you know, we've heard it all and they can't actually get up there and do it. But they've actually come there the first time. So you are now, through the mover and seconder, are approving that it becomes a 1 hour, complete maximum 1 hour of all the questions. Well, that's what that indicates, Mr. Mover. And that person has come in...
Careful.
Not to be extended.
Sorry.
You can't extend it.
You can't extend it, though. This is the thing. But through you, Mr. Mayor, I just believe we should put no time limit on it. I think it should be up to the presiding member to manage this. And if your presiding member can't manage it, then they should actually go to class and learn how to do it. Seriously, this is where we are, this whole city is funded by the ratepayers.
So I understand what you're saying, but let's be really clear. I think it's important to note that this council isn't voting on what the Act is going to say. This council has just put a suggestion to the minister as one of many suggestions. I also think, if you read it carefully, the City of Stirling is just saying, if local laws are to be standardised, they must be based on the lightest touch regulation, and the city has also requested there's got to be latitude because every council isn't the same. And I think it's acknowledging the fact that yourself, Councillor Farrelly and Ree have said regarding question time. The city understands that if there's a very contentious item, that there may be a need to extend this, and that could still sit within those meeting procedures. This is about putting a framework over those timeframes, but it's also acknowledging that if the community come and spend 2 hours asking questions, those very concerns they have about that major item has to be determined by this council, who possibly aren't in the best decision-making frame after sitting here for 4 hours or 5 hours. So it's important to have that balance between the important decisions you're going to make and the questions that are done. But there's no limit on, there's no intent on this I can see to try to stifle public question time. That's not it. Councillor Farrelly, you can continue.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, and we do know when we have late meetings and how the decision-making is being compromised to some degree. We hope it doesn't really influence the decision. However, I still go back to the fact, and I was one of those sort of people who would turn up once in a blue moon. Now, you do hesitate, you do consider whether it's worth it. You come in, and as a council, we should listen to those people, because they are the people out there in the community. And I would hate to see us put any time limit on it. But at the same time, I'm saying to you, Mr Mayor, or any presiding member, that you then have to take into account, as you said today, we might have had the reply to those questions. Now, they're very amenable to that, and most people are. They'll get up, they'll say, well, maybe you've already answered, or no, I don't even get up. And I've heard people say that, you've already answered my question. I think we need to give people that respect who have come in here, bothered to make the effort,
we might just need you to grab someone's mic next to you, or is it gone off? Yep. Thanks, Councillor Farrelly. And have I got any indication at home? Councillor Kristovich?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to ask a point of clarification on this. So when we say 1 hour, are we saying that there's an opportunity for us to extend beyond an hour if we choose to as a council during a debate?
I think it's a bit of a grey area because it's up to the minister to decide, and if they decide latitude as well. Mr Blanchard, if you can...
Thank you. I agree with your summation, Mr Mayor.
Okay, because just from this point of view here, what we're saying in very clear terms is we don't want question time to be any longer than an hour. That's what we're...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. From my recollection of the discussion was that we looked for a minimum time.
Just take a seat, Councillor Kristovich, for a sec.
So we looked for a minimum time. We didn't say we were going to enforce a minimum time. And after that, we had debate about whether or not you ask us as the presiding member, do you wish to extend, which we often do. But the discussion, I believe, was led by myself, was about trying to pick a minimum time. Set that time. If you want to extend it, fine. If you don't, then don't. Let's not misrepresent it as us trying to stop debate at 1 hour. No one ever said that during the discussion. We did have some robust debate about whether or not we felt it was quality debate after a certain number of hours.
Thank you. So I think the intent, and look, I think again, to put it in perspective, the minister's not going to grab the City of Stirling's recommendations and rewrite them. There's hundreds and hundreds of these going in. This was about putting a framework in place. So I'm confident this isn't trying to stifle public question time at all.
Yeah, and just further then, just to clarify, so it says 1 hour. Now, to me, it's more about the message we're sending to the community, saying we don't think there should be more than 1 hour question time. At the moment, the council has the ability to shut down question time whenever we want, after 45 minutes, after an hour, after 2 hours. So we can do it now if we want to. So we don't need the minister to shut down debate. We can do it ourselves. And if it needs to go long, the thing I'm concerned about, and look, the minister's probably going to ignore this anyway, but the reality is that if it needs to go for longer than an hour, and if there's a legitimate reason for it to go longer than an hour, we currently don't have a mechanism in here to go longer than an hour if this was adopted. But there might be a valid reason why sometimes it might be that that's sort of an issue that it's valid, the questions are valid, and there's 1,000 people in the gallery, and we're saying sorry after an
Point
hour.
of clarification, sorry.
That's right.
My understanding from what Councillor Lagan had just said through the point of clarification before is that this is an hour and then it's up to council to extend it beyond that. Is that correct?
So I think one of the problems we have, again, going back to my original little chat, is by adding words in all the time, sometimes it becomes less clearer rather than more clear. Again, I'm trying to make it easy in the sense, I don't want councillors here to vote against this submission because they're opposed to this. So what hasn't happened yet, no one's actually moved an amendment, so if I can lead you that way. No. No, wait. Okay, but you didn't move it, so no, you didn't.
The second and they
Yeah,
said no.
no, during the discussions we did that, but I'm suggesting now, so it's different. I understand, but I'm now asking if someone would like to move an amendment, you can test this. You've already debated, councillor, so you can't. That's what I'm getting at.
Can I please move an amendment?
So councillor Sandri can move an amendment, and then we can test it, and it can sort it out once and for all.
That public question time.
Well, you probably just need to either remove, I haven't got it in front of me now, but either remove the words maximum or take the blue writing out, whichever of those is simpler.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, I can see. I'm just suggesting what the wording is. So just maybe it might be easier. To the minute taker's mind going to page 273.4 and just typing that out. Sorry.
So
this is the only way I can.
My suggestion to test it is, again, by the workshop adding all this in, you are all concerned about our question time, yet we're putting a submission in about every band of local government and it's complicating it. So
yeah, so I'm just, Mr. Mayor, all I'm going to suggest is, in relation to public question time limits, the city requests that legislation set a time of 1 hour, a minimum time.
That's
no,
what
sorry.
My suggestion would be just remove the blue writing. If it'd be easier to remove it, because it.
No, I'm
yeah.
just.
You can't, councillor.
Yep, that's fine. To remove it, to delete dot points.
So the amendment to
4,
delete
5,
those.
6 and 7 on page 273 under the City of Stirling comments.
Great, and Councillor Ree would be happy to second that, I'm sure, because that's.
4, 5, 6
It's
and
the
7.
power of the presiding member to extend.
You don't need to put that in. That's there. Let's not complicate it by reiterating stuff that exists. We're removing. No, we're just removing the time limit stuff. Yep. Okay, so that's there. Councillor Pratt, are you trying to oppose it, or you want to vote early?
I'm trying to add a suggestion, quick one.
Give us a quick one.
At the end of maximum time, add in before seeking an extension.
No, again, I think we're trying to. Yeah. So all that stuff. So remember, the Act doesn't disappear, and the stuff that happens. And I think what I'm getting from the debate is you're trying to say we've talked about this before, and we've got good meeting procedures, local laws, and we can extend it if we need to. So we don't need to write the Act. We've just got to give suggestions on the main points. All right. So this is an amendment to remove the blue writing, so points 4, 5, 6 and 7 from the submission. If I could have a show of hands who's in favour of removing them, please. So 4 we have Councillor Ree, Councillor Perkov, Councillor Olo, Councillor Thornton, Councillor Criado, Councillor Farrelly, Councillor Kristovich, Councillor Migdale and myself. And against we have Councillor Ferrante, Councillor Proud, Councillor Sargent, Councillor Sandri, Councillor Lagan and Councillor Hatton. That motion is carried, I think. Carried. So those will now be removed and that's sorted. So that's... All right. Councillors, are there any other indication? That's... The amendment's passed. So we're back on the substantive motion. No, councillor, you finished debate 4 councillors ago.
No, you asked me my ones on. You asked me what I thought of the document. I'm going through and telling you. In the middle, you're
I'm
doing
sorry,
amendments.
I'm sorry, Councillor. That finished a long time ago. And then I said, have you finished? And you said yes. And
For
then I
that
went on to
item.
Councillor Farrelly and Councillor
That was
Christovich.
for that item. That little bit.
Councillor, we're not going to change every word in this
Not necessarily.
submission.
We haven't so far. Okay. Page 285.
Councillor, I can't let you speak again. You've debated the item. It was very clear.
No, it wasn't. We're only talking about that one thing. Question
It wasn't.
time.
We've gone on from there and talked about the whole submission.
But no, we aren't. But that means that
Councillor,
no one
please
else
don't
can talk
argue.
about anything. Well,
You
I
can
don't-
ask. You can ask a couple of questions. I'll let you ask a couple of questions.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Ask a question.
On page 285, the question is, why didn't the city put in there that we support...
Councillors, I can't hear.
Why didn't the city write that we actually support wards where they've got the city has no comment, whereas we said we do support wards? So
You're
why
the
is it no comment? That's a question.
I can't answer that. You're the council.
staff
Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That proposal relates only to band 3 and 4 councils, and we're a band 1 council.
All right, next question. If you've got another question, I'll allow one more question and then we're moving on.
On page 286, with regard to the leases, the city said, not the council, the city said they strongly support, but the conversation was not 12 months, it was 2 years. So it was considered longer. So why didn't that get changed?
Mr. Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't recall that point being made at the workshop.
I think that, again, this is fairly minute sort of detail on the Act. I think it's important this city is really strong in its views on the main points, and let's not worry about timeframes, etc. We either support stuff or we don't support it.
Okay, page 288, your big councils was less than
Mr.
100,
Mayor.
it's only 10.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
We did talk about
thanks,
that.
Councillor.
I move that the motion be put and the amendment no longer be heard.
Thank you. So there is a motion. There's a seconder for that.
I just want one clarification though. I believe that I have moved the first recommendation and not the alternative recommendation, which is on page 157. That's what should have been moved, the alternative recommendation.
Let's just check that out for you. I'm
Thank
pretty
you.
sure the motion we got on the...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we had taken your motion as is the attachments 3, which is the tracked changed attachment.
Yeah, that is correct, but I hadn't verbalised that.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor.
So that is a procedural. So we will now put the motion. Do I have to vote that we put the motion, or just go straight to the motion? Don't know. Straight to the motion. So move Councillor Lagan, seconded Councillor Hatton with that amendment of those removed words. So I will now put that. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Lagan. And we'll go on to item 13.2, the annual report 2020-21 for consideration on page 310. Do I have a mover of a motion, please? That would be helpful. Councillor Lagan has moved the motion. Yes?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hatton has seconded. Is there anyone opposed? Being no one opposed, I will put that, noting an absolute majority is required. All those in favour, please. Thank you. And against? Thank you. So all those in, all councillors in favour, noting Councillor Ree is against the motion. While there's no debate on this, can I just add a congratulations to the team on the annual report? In all honesty, you know, quite often I do talk to councillors and the community about the gold standard and the awards it receives through the Australasian Reporting Awards. But when you see the work goes in, I know the pride that is there from a lot of the staff who are behind this and the supporting staff, and to the CEO and the directors. And it is honestly an amazing piece of work. The amount of time, it's a shame it's taken this long to come due to the waiting for those financial reports that we had to wait for to be able to bring it to us. But I think the work that goes behind it is exceptional, and the quality of the reporting And if anyone challenges transparency in local government, I've never seen an organisation that can put a document like that together with a level of detail in there. It would be hard to argue that local government isn't the most transparent organisation in the world, seriously. So well done to all involved. Item 13.3, notice of motion. Councillor Felicity Farrelly, walking a cycling path, safety between Scarborough Beach and Trigg. Do I have a mover of a motion, please? Councillor Farrelly, thanks. Just tricking.
Yes, I move the...
No, just your mic, yep.
Yeah,
That's it.
good, thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move the suggested alternative recommendation that the city develops a strategy for the long-term implementation of a suitable walking and cycling facility between Scarborough and Trigg. And I'd also like to thank the officers who did this report. I thought it's very comprehensive. They've gone back through all the difficulties in that particular area, so I really appreciate that work they've done. Thank you.
Well done. And a seconder for that, Councillor Kristovich. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I will put that. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 14, notice of motion for consideration. I have nil. Item 15, questions by members which due notice has been given. Item 15.1, there's questions on notice here from Councillor Ree. Item 16, new business of an urgent nature. I have nil. Item 17, matters behind closed doors. Due to technological requirements, the live stream of tonight's meeting will finish prior to this last item coming, which is a confidential item. This means that we won't see the viewers at home again until the next council meeting. So please refer to the minutes of tonight's meeting, which are available to view on Friday. So we'll now say goodbye to those viewers at home.